It is a period of civil war. Welcome to the podcast within a podcast, Rogue Ones, where some of our hosts go rogue, seemingly to only talk about the High Republic, but who is to say? My name is Ollie. My pronouns are they, them. You can find me on most social media at OllieFresh. And the question that we are starting with today, usually in RuPalp's Podrace, we come up with a gender of the week, but we're not doing that for Rogue Ones. The question that we would like to answer is, would you rather fight the Nihil or the Drengir? Hands down, I think the Nihil. The Drengir are so scary to me as a concept. They fit basically every horror movie aspect that deeply terrifies me. And the Nihil are just guys. They're just guys. I mean, they're also that's a gender neutral guys. They're just guys.
I mean, to be fair, what are they but selling sugar bear hair vitamins?
Not the MLM.
People.
Look, I mean, here's the thing. I've people have tried to recruit me to pyramid schemes before. I feel like I know how to turn that down. I feel like I have a chance there, especially depending on who it is, because I feel like there are certain Tempest Runner teams, certain clouds that I could take on pretty simply because I am very cool.
Hi, I'm Jess. My pronouns are they, them. My social media is at Kawaii Jessio, on Twitter and TikTok. And yeah, between the Nihil and the Drengir, I'd also have to go with the Nihil because they're just a bunch of fucking ravers having a bad time. Well, they're having a good time, I guess, but everyone else is having a bad time. And I think I could take some of them on in a fight, but the Drengir would immediately kill me. I don't think I would survive an encounter with the Drengir.
Hi, it's me, Mel. I'm the Wedge Antilles of this podcast, and I'm just kind of here for whatever reason. You can find me on social media at Grunkle Rex, or specifically TikTok. I use they, them pronouns, and I would also fight the Nihil. The thing with the Drengir is that, like Ollie, they freak me out very badly. There is I forgot which issue of the High Republic comic it is, where they just are up in people's mouths, and I do not enjoy that. That is not.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That looked. Ugh.
The hurted. That shit do look like it hurted, and I do think about that a lot. That's every time I go to read one of the comics, I'm like, okay, I need to prepare myself for what I am about to see. But yeah, we are here today to talk about the High Republic, and we are specifically talking about the first 3 books, which is Light of the Jedi, which we'll be touching on, Into the Dark, and A Test of Courage. We're also going to be talking about, I believe, up to issue 7 of the comics. What is everyone's thoughts? There's so much going on. I will say I am also sort of the last one in the gate, or out of the gate.
Well, for the 3 of us here, but we all know Claudia has not even touched them.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Sorry, Claudia. We're calling you out. But yeah, so I am still the newest. I think everyone else here has actually finished everything. I have not. So this is a lot very fresh in my mind.
I was actually going to ask the both of you, just as a little precursor of you don't have to go super into it, obviously, because this is an episode specifically not about the Light of the Jedi, but just your thoughts going from Light of the Jedi into this stuff.
I really liked Light of the Jedi. It was a totally different experience from almost every other Star Wars book and most other books that I have read, fantasy sci-fi wise. I was not expecting the next 2 to be so micro level, because Light of the Jedi is very macro. So it's a huge scale. It's introducing you to the world, whereas the next 2 are Into the Dark and A Test of Courage are both very micro level. It's very much their own self-contained story within the world. And I thought that was a really interesting change of pace. At first, it was kind of I thought it was kind of weird, and I had a little bit of trouble getting into it because I had to sort of connect with the different style of storytelling. But once I did, and now that I've read them and looking back on them, like I really enjoyed them. I think they've fallen into a pattern of creating a world and setting and then putting smaller narratives in to flesh out the world, which is something I love.
Yeah, like Ollie, I really enjoyed it. It did blindside me a bit because of how it went from 0 to 100 real quick within the first chapter. I was like, oh, oh, okay. I guess. Although, to be honest, the first half of the, or not first half, because I guess it's like 3 parts of the book, right? The first part of the book is a little hard to get through. I feel like it was like trudging along, at least for me, where I did read the first part of the book and then just dropped the book for like 3 months and then came back. But then when I did actually get into the thick of it, to quote the Backyardigans, it was really good. All the characters that are introduced and the world that they're like living in at this time period is just everything that I wish that the later Star Wars stuff is too. I mean, I guess it's still like that, but I don't know. There's just something about Light of the Jedi that's very. I'm trying to find a good word for what I'm thinking of. Why is the first word I'm thinking of majestic? That's not the feeling I'm feeling. Yep, come back to me. I'll figure it out eventually. But yeah, I thought it was really fun, good setup, like Ollie said too, for the other books like Into the Dark and A Test of Courage.
I will say I actually think that first it's the first third of Light of the Jedi. I really liked it. I want to say that's almost my favorite part of the book. I just like the way that it establishes how different the Jedi Order is from what we see later on, in a world where not only do we have Avar Kriss, whose whole thing is like linking the Jedi, but they also seem so cohesive and so like prepared to deal with matters that are entirely out of proportion with anything they've had to deal with before. Yeah, I just really like that whole sequence, and I love the part where they're like repeating that mantra. I think Noah said it in the last Rogue Ones.
Yeah, that's really good.
They were like, "We will move it." And I was like, "Oh my god!" I thought about that for so long after I finished the book.
Yeah, I completely agree. Light of the Jedi, I think what was really refreshing to me about it, especially coming into Star Wars, Star Wars as we've known it has been the Skywalker saga, all 9 movies in the main Star Wars line, not Solo or Rogue One, which I mean ostensibly are part of the Skywalker saga because they involve people who are close to that narrative. It is so refreshing to have no true main character, because like sure, like Avar is on the cover, she's at like the main like focal point on the cover, but she's not the main character, and she has like a story that is relevant and we care about, but like there is some sense of greater community that is so lost in the main Star Wars mainline, simply because that's just like the difference of the story, and I think that's really powerful, and I like the collaborative nature also of these books, and I think to kind of jump into the books that we're going to be talking about in this episode, of seeing other authors' interpretations of other people's characters. It's like people handing around their OCs, and I love that very much.
Yeah, like in theater terms, I guess this is more like of an ensemble heavy story, which is, like Mel said, really refreshing compared to it being a focus on the Skywalkers. Like, sorry to the Skywalkers, but the High Republic cast is just kind of built different.
I agree 100%. I think this is almost something that I love about Clone Wars so much, and why I think it's I think that the TV shows are some of the best part of Star Wars, is that it lets you flesh out a big universe that is set up by the movies. Because in Clone Wars we see so many other characters and so many other stories that, while we know the main characters are like Ahsoka and Anakin and Obi-Wan, and sometimes Rex depending on the day, we get to see so much other stuff and so much other world building, and that's like my favorite part of the Clone Wars. And that is something that the High Republic has delivered on so well. I was so excited to see that. It immediately had me hooked.
It's been neat to look at also non-Jedi characters in the Star Wars universe and like really get to look at them. Once again, Rogue One, Solo, these were opportunities for us to explore those parts. But, you know, Into the Dark, we have Affy, we have Leox, and we have Geode. And those characters, they're my favorite part of the book personally. I just love the dynamic that they have, and the fact that Claudia Gray made me care about a goddamn rock being is very powerful. And the way I think about that scene where Affy's like, where's Geode? And Leox is like, oh, he's at the club. And I was like, how does he move?
The idea of walking into a club and you're like seeing Geode there, like
on a skateboard. She's on a skateboard.
Geode at the strip club, what will he do?
He's just on a skateboard.
He would give so much like tips to like all the dancers. He's respectful.
You know that Geode is not only respectful but also an incredible tipper. As a terminal customer service worker, Geode really just seems like someone who would respect my time. His phone calls are short and to the point, and I love that for him.
It's just silence, but you know what he's saying.
Exactly. He's like, here, he calls and I'm like, hello? Okay, I'll get that done for you right away.
I do like to think about one of the moments towards the beginning of the book where Aretha's interacting with Geode, and then he's just like, so this situation, huh? And then they're all just like, Geode is having a moment. You like, could you like leave him alone? He's kind of having a tough time. He just needs a moment. When I first read that part, I felt really insane because I felt a lot like Aretha, where I was just like, what is happening with this fucking rock? But Geode is a king. We stand Geode in this house.
I think that that's also something I really like about Star Wars is the non-Jedi stuff. But I think with the way that the High Republic has situated itself, it makes even the Jedi, not to say even the Jedi, like they're not interesting in other pieces of Star Wars media, but it gives all of the Jedi very different personalities and very different interpretations of the Force. And that's covered in Light of the Jedi, but it makes them, I would think, equally as interesting because they also have their own moral codes, much like non-Jedi characters. That's one of the reasons that I really liked. I loved the story with Comac and Orla in Into the Dark because it really colors like, here's Jedi who are different but aren't like Anakin. Because I feel like that's one of our biggest things in like the prequel era is that it's like pretty much all of the Jedi feel really similarly except for Anakin, who has problems. But it really shows us such a wide range of beliefs and interpretations of the Force, not just in how they tap into it, but in what it means and how it guides a person. I think that that's such a cool aspect that it really gets into the Dark.
Yeah. We're not talking about this book right now, of course. But Out of the Shadows has a character who is not Force sensitive, but still believes in the Force and like has like that very interesting like thought process about it. And I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh my God.
Jordana, my beloved. Anyways.
I love not knowing what's going on.
Oh, also fun fact. Sorry. This is just I need to get on my my shit. I live tweeted reading basically all of these books. And I feel very bad for the people who might have been spoiled from the things I have said on my Twitter threads. But I truly cannot describe, like, it felt like I was watching a movie reading all of these books in the way that I was like so deeply hooked, and I was saying shit aloud. Like, not to get into the test of courage already, because we can, kind of move back and forth freely. But the part where Vern, when fucking Imri is like, you are either with me or against me, girl, and I'm gonna go to the dark side. And Vernestra's like, oh, word? Are we gonna fight about this right now? And Imri's like, yeah, and she beats the shit out of him. I was like scream laughing, because I was like, dude, like, you are 14 years old. You're gonna try to beat a Jedi Knight, and you're a child. I know she is also a child, but like, she's a child who is a Jedi Knight.
That I do think, not to jump around too much, but something that did make me laugh in A Test of Courage, and I do realize like what it was trying to say now, like thinking about it, but when Vernestra was like, I don't want Emery to see my light whip because I'm afraid it'll turn him to the dark side. I was like, why? This feels like some sort of propaganda, but I don't know what kind. Like, it's like, I don't want my kid to see gay people because it'll turn them gay.
Not Vern trying to hide gay people from Emery.
I mean, basically. No, Justina Ireland actually has really fed us in terms of like the queer representation and queer representation that feels like sorry, once again, I'm jumping all around, but there is some queer rep in these books where I'm like, okay, like you're here, you're queer.
Get used to it.
Get used to it, I guess. Like the Santeca husbands, which, okay, here, let's do a quick poll. Who realized that they were gay when they read the book?
Me. What?
I didn't fucking realize because I'm stupid.
He said his husband.
I know, but
listen,
Noah also didn't realize.
Okay, listen, to be fair, I was just listening to the audiobook at 2x speed and like also doing other things at the same time. So I think I just did not hear that part. I was like, oh yeah, they're besties.
Besties with the same last name. It's the same way that Kanan and Hera, when Hera calls Kanan love in the first season, but they're just like besties. That's like,
not just straight watching the Santeca husband.
They're gal
so sorry.
I just also really like how these books in a roundabout way are also connecting to other parts of the Star Wars universe, going back to Into the Dark, because the Amaxine station, is that how you say it? That's how I read it. Is the station that Snoke hangs out in. That is the place where he takes Kylo Ren to be like, we're evil, ooh. And the idea of Kylo Ren stumbling upon the Drengir and being like, oh fuck, I fucked up. This is how we're decanonizing the sequels. The Drengir beat the shit out of Kylo Ren.
To all the people who are saying fire the SJW High Republic writers, they're the ones doing the work to decanonize the sequel, so maybe you should stay in your lane.
I can't with that.
No, but you're so right. Like, there's so many times where they will say something in one of these books and reference like how they perceive the Force or like some trick they can do or like some situation in the galaxy where I'm like, oh, I understand that because I've seen Star Wars. Oh my God. I also do like when they will reference something and be like, yeah, that's something. Like when they were like, yeah, the Mandalorians haven't started a war in a little while. I was like, oh, period. Good for them.
Yeah, actually, Palpatine is a baby right now, and we actually switched to his POV in The Rising Storm.
I fucking hate that.
Oh my God, that's
Elzar Man's baby is Sheev Palpatine.
No, he would never.
Not Palpatine being the polycule love child.
No, the Santeca husbands are like their home is like on Naboo, right? And Palpatine is from Naboo.
No!
Palpatine's actually related to the Santeca husband.
I can't with that.
Oh no, not Sheev Santeca. One thing that I thought was very cool, if you guys listen to our main podcast, you'll know that there's something about me, and it's that I am obsessed with the Lasats. I think they're so cool. I love to learn more about them. It pains me that the only two that we have seen, there have been two mentioned. I believe both of them are in Into the Dark, and neither of them are actually like from Lasan or from Lyrasan. And I'm like, I am so desperate to know lore about that. And I'm like, please, someone write a book about it. But I'm like, dang, this one guy's just like a mercenary who's like, I hate lesbians. And this other guy, well, this other woman, I believe, is a Jedi, which I think is very cool. I think we should just start accruing Lasats and just let's see how many of them we can get in canon. We're up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're up to 5. So let's get some more in there. No, 6.
Yeah, 6.
I was like, there's 6.
So sorry. So sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, the 2 in the High Republic, the 3 in Rebels, and then Jara T'Pol.
Yeah, I I enjoy getting to explore like all these different like alien not alien, oh my god, cancel Mel party. Mel's over party. All these non-human species is like they're really, not only are we getting to explore ones that we already know of, but also like getting to introduce new ones. And I think that that is very fun and epic. For example, would you describe the Drengir as like an alien species? Because I mean, they are sentient.
Yeah, I think
yeah,
then they have their own planet originally, right?
Mm-hmm.
They came from somewhere, so they gotta be their own little
Keeve knows. I don't know.
Yeah, Keeve, you do you. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's really cool to see like new facets of the world fleshed out. What I also like to see too is like we have the existing ones, like we saw like Orla, who's an Umbaran. We've seen the Umbarans very limitedly, and they were basically just like like one-dimensional villains. So it was really cool getting to see like, oh, here's an actual person, like they're actually people, which I love. There's so many, I think, facets in Star Wars and so much that we can go into regarding like non-human politics. And a lot of the times in the shows and the movies, I almost don't want them to, because I know they're not going to be able to handle it well. But there's stuff that in the books I think can be handled really well. And not to bring up Thrawn, but you see Thrawn deals with like non-human politics more than any show or movie does. And I think it does it better than they would have been able to. And that's something I'm seeing again in the High Republic, is like there are non-humans and they are there, and there's not a lot of like non-human like racism or xenophobia, I guess. So it's kind of interesting. I guess we'll see the way that goes, how we get from where we are in the High Republic to where we are in the prequels era.
I do truly think it's like the work of like fucking Sheev and like Darth Plagueis, where whatever the fuck happens there, because like this is an era that like, no, you're completely right. Like, sure, there are facets of like oppression that are obviously working. Like, I think if classism didn't exist in Star Wars, the Nihil would not be a thing, amongst like a whole lot of other things. It is very interesting. We're not talking about the Rising Storm, but there is some like very interesting politics there about like just how non-human species are interacting with the core worlds, which are largely human. And during this time, even I would argue like are more diverse. And I think also books help with having more like non-human diversity, because movies it's hard to have. You're either CGIing them or like, you know, doing like that the special effects. And that can be difficult. I also really appreciate the High Republic for trying to dismantle some of the more icky racial stereotypes of some of these alien species. Wet Bub in Light of the Jedi is not necessarily a good example, but there are like some other Gungan characters. Gungan rights.
Gungan rights.
I'm just happy to see that they get to have like a little bit more autonomy and like aren't just like minstrel joke, ha ha ha.
Yeah, I think that what's really cool too is because the High Republic authors are kind of getting the opportunity to make their own world, so to speak. They are able to make, I think that the villains feel so much more human than they have felt in Star Wars in the past, because even with characters that they tried so hard to humanize, like villains that they've tried to humanize, like I think Kylo Ren is a perfect example of like, oh, he's a human, but being like, oh, he's just, he's a tortured soul. I feel like with the Nihil, and even with the Drengir, I think to a certain extent, they feel like people, and they feel like it's like, okay, they have a clear motivation and it's clear how they got here. They're obviously the bad guys, and it is not framed for me to feel sympathy for them or like them, but they almost feel scarier because of that. I think like the Nihil feel like something that is so real.
Yeah, because MLMs are real. Have you ever gotten a message that said, "Hey, girly"? Would you like to be
didn't Ollie say at the beginning
Yeah.
But also I love the thought of humanizing the Drengir and their motivation being like, we're just hungry, bitch.
We've all been there.
They're just hangry.
They really are. They got trapped for like who knows how long, and then they woke up and were like, "Hey, what the fuck?"
Hey, Drengir, eat a Snickers. You're not you when you're hungry.
Okay,
I
also
don't want a Snickers.
and I think it's also very funny that it was the Sith. You see it in the comics, that the Sith were the ones to trap the Drengir on the fucking Amaxine station, and it's like, damn, bitch, y'all are evil in the sense that like you're gonna make these beasts like resent like non-Drengir even more because you're like, I'm gonna antagonize you. Fuck you, you're stuck here.
They said, "Fuck you, you stupid plants. Goodbye."
I liked fuck you stupid fruits. What I really liked too is the way that in Into the Dark, when Comac and Orla are first like engaging with the Drengir, they're like, oh, they're the same ones who locked us up, and the other one's like, no, those ones had red blades, their blades aren't red. And then for a second I was like, oh, are they gonna like work together? And then they were like, eat them. And I was like, okay, they're probably not gonna work together.
Do we want to get into a test of courage, actually?
Yeah, let's get into yeah.
Arinda.
Not Arinda.
Arinda. Let's talk about I'm gonna do my driller voice. Let's talk about a test of courage. My
Doesn't
favorite
one of
part
the
was when
Santeca
Vern was there.
Doesn't one of the
love
Santeca
her.
husbands sound like that? I listened to the audiobook for Lives of the Jedi, and I'm pretty sure one of them does sound like that because fucking Marc Thompson doesn't have many voices.
Marc has given me fucking Stockholm syndrome because the whole time I read anything that's like not Marc Thompson, I'm like, who the fuck is that? And then I hear Marc do a voice for a woman, and I'm like, oh no. To be fair, his woman voices I think have gotten better. Not to get too much into the audiobooks, but like I really do like, I think the audiobooks for the High Republic are really well done, and like the sound design is really good. I also think the acting is spectacular. Not to be a Marc Thompson stan on main, like he's a really, really good actor. And I realized that while reading Light of the Jedi, because there's so many characters, and not one of them was I like, oh, this sounds just like this person, like maybe from another book that he has done, but never like in that book itself did I think like, oh, this character sounds just like this other character from this other part of the world.
Yeah, speaking of which, I do believe Marc Thompson's voice for Marchion Ro, Mark Ro, or as we're now the newest evolution, Marcus Ro, does kind of sound like Anakin and Lakinda. Like had a love child, Lakinda from the Thrawn Greater Good audiobook, and then Anakin from Star Wars. Have you heard of that one?
No, I've actually never heard of that.
Oh, it's actually this like movie series. I think you'd enjoy it.
I actually
fucking hate you too.
I actually don't like movies. Is there anything else that I could?
There's actually some books. There's some audiobooks you could try out.
Oh, really?
I fucking
Who's
hate
in them?
you too.
Is Anakin from Star Wars in them?
I was gonna say, since you brought up Marcus Ro, it's Marc Thompson Ro, since he is voicing Marchion for Tempest Runners. But yeah.
Speaking of which, I'm very excited for Tempest Runner. Like today, now that I have finished my High Republic speedrun, I'm going back to the Star Wars YouTube channel and watching all of the backlog of like the High Republic show. And first of all, it has helped me contextualize a lot of the events that I have read, and I'm like, oh wait, and it has dissuaged my one fear for the future of the series, but I will not go into that because once again, no spoilers. Well, spoilers for this, but you know what the fuck I mean. Anyways,
a test of courage.
A test of courage. Hearing I forgot who's the voice actress for A Test of Courage, the audiobook.
Kaylor Lair? What is her last? I forget her last name.
Let
her
me
first
look
name
it
is
up really
Kaylor.
quick.
Yeah, it's Kaylor something.
I will talk a little bit about that. I think that was really refreshing to me because once again, I do really enjoy Marc Thompson. But like having that kind of like reprieve of like, here's a female narrator, was very nice. That being said, and once again, this is not even a spoiler for Race to Crash Point Tower, but they have a different narrator than Marc Thompson, Kaylor Lee or Lay.
Oh, fucking Todd Habercorn.
Yeah, that voice did really like throw me off because I was so used to Marc being the voice that I was like, oh, I have to start this over because I'm like, what the fuck is just happening?
When I started Into the Dark, the audiobook, Dan Bittner, who I also think is a very good actor, as soon as he started speaking, I was like, that's not Marc. Not that there's anything wrong. I really enjoyed his portrayal of the characters. It's going to be very weird to hear any of them not as him.
Yeah, I felt that way too, because I did listen to all of them as audiobooks and I read along to a few of them, but not all of them. But going from Marc Thompson, especially because the other audiobooks I had listened to before were all of the Theron books that are also narrated by Marc Thompson. So when I went to Into the Dark Afterlife, the Jedi, and it wasn't Marc Thompson anymore, I was just like, who the fuck are you? Who the fuck are you? You're not Marc Thompson. But no, he did really well. I really loved his wreath, even though Ollie has now kind of messed that up in my head because Ollie said Dipper Pines and now I can't unhear.
He sounds like Dipper Pines and Nan sounds like Jennifer Coolidge.
Nan sounds like who?
No, like Jennifer Coolidge. I'm telling you, Jess, can you confirm? She's like,
yeah, kind of.
She's like, you would have looked like the 4th of July if you joined the Nihil.
Nan is okay. So that's sorry, not to get us back onto the topic. But I really do like all of like these side characters that were like, oh, they're just gonna be here for this one book, and then like seeing them in other properties. I know that like Ollie can't necessarily quite speak to this yet, and I won't get too far deeper than that. But like characters like Leox, Geode, and Afi, like they all do. Like, we're seeing other things that they're up to. And the same for Nan and others. And I think that's fun and exciting. And just seeing how they interlock with this overall narrative is also very satisfying. Also seeing, like, I cannot wait to see Keeve in a book. I'm just very excited to, like, see how she interacts with all these other characters. I cannot wait. We've joked on this podcast and just on social media about the Avar, Elzar, and Stellan polycule. Seeing those 3 individuals together in a book is going to make me insane. I know for a fact, because there are some moments. Oh fuck, that's the Rising Storm. Never mind, I won't talk about it. But there are some moments where I'm like, God damn, these people, they're just kiss, and you are in a polycule, bestie.
I do worry that if you put the 3 of them together, they will have a Steven Universe like fusion and become Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, Obi-Wan Kenobi's actually
because you're so right,
the gemsona of
the gemsona being Obi-Wan.
I now like to headcanon that Obi-Wan, having like probably read some like Jedi history, did read about Avar, Stellan, and Elzar, and just like, damn them, those are the blueprint. That's who I want my whole personality to be.
Sorry, I keep on like jumping around, but I remembered what my original point was when I was talking about like all these side characters coming back into the narrative. A character that I really loved in A Test of Courage was Avon Starros. I just love to see a girl boss winning, and she was 12 years old and like fully the fact that they went through so much peril as little children. Like, I read the Percy Jackson books as a child and I was like, this is fine, even though they're like, you know, like 14 and 15 when those like books happen at like the end of the series. Like, I think they start this series as like 12-year-olds. I think that there's something very humanizing also of seeing these Jedi like interact with people and have like this amount of empathy because of what we saw in the Clone Wars, which is not to say that they didn't have empathy for the average person, but there was like a detachment that hindered them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think that this is a really good time to bring up the Martez sisters arc in season 7 of the Clone Wars, when they were like, yeah, our family died, and the Jedi who came to see us was like, well, they're with the Force now, which was Luminara, and there's no Luminara hate here. I will not tolerate that. But I do think it's a great example of how the Jedi Order did kind of shift more to almost being like an insulated thing. That I think in the High Republics you see Vern, Vernestra is like, Avon, you have to be more like empathetic. Like Vernestra is like always clearly very empathetic. So even though she's like, well, this would work, this coping mechanism would work for me, she does not tell Imri to do the same thing when he loses Douglas that she tells Honesty to do after losing his father, because she realizes that different people cope different in different ways, and the Jedi view loss in a much different way than like a non-Jedi would. So I thought that was really like talking about the ways that they talked about empathy and grief were really interesting.
Yeah, especially for like a middle grade reader's book. This was like, of the High Republic books that I have read, which is to say all of them, a Test of Courage and the Rising Storm are very close in terms of like my favorite. And because we're talking about these specific books, I will be talking about how the Test of Courage is my favorite of the High Republic books because of how it deals with grief and how it just has like this very honest portrayal of like rage, and that is as a way of grieving. Not to be an honesty weftkinny on Maine, but there was something truly like, I have not seen that. I've seen it in other media, kind of, but to have it explored in this kind of more fantasy world, even though he's like, you know, a normie within the fantasy world, was very surprising, and I truly did not realize how much I was going to relate to these characters, even though they're middle grade characters.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I thought, because the Test of Courage I thought was very, very good. And I tend to not be someone who reads a lot of like stuff that I don't want to be like, oh, stuff that's below my age range, because that's not what I mean. But I do tend to lean more towards books that are written like for adults. But reading this was a really interesting change of pace because it didn't really feel like it was dumbed down. And I think this is what we've been really lucky with a lot of Star Wars shows and Star Wars media, is they haven't dumbed a lot of stuff down for kids thinking that they won't be able to understand, because that's a huge pet peeve of mine, is the idea that children can't have or dissect complicated feelings or, you know, stuff that's not super simple. But I was really impressed because while there was definitely a tonal difference and like a plot difference, the actual emotions and the situations that were talked about were not super tonally different from the other High Republic books that I had read so far.
Yeah, as someone who was deeply broken by The Rising Storm, I will say that like I cried because of that book, but I also cried because of Test of Courage, because there are just like these scenes that treat young people as though they are people. It's good to see in your Star Wars, and it's good to see just, I don't know, Justina Ireland, I'm your biggest fan. Please come on to this podcast.
Yeah,
I'd love
Justina,
to talk to you.
Justina, if you're around, you're free, I will make time for you. I also feel like Vernestra could, I feel, be in any era of Star Wars and would like figure it out. Like she'd be like, okay, let's not have this problem anymore. Put her in the original trilogy and she'd be like, okay, I'm gonna go take out Palpatine, but I'm gonna she's, you know, where Luke tried to negotiate and be like, please don't do this, she would have been able to do it. She would have been like, Palpatine
takes out her light whip and just is like, this is the guillotine. Yeah.
I do like her being like, Palpatine, I don't want to kill you because it's not the Jedi way. And he's like, well, it is the Sith way. And she's like, I don't care, stop. And he's like, oh, okay.
I agree with like if you put Vern in anything, she would have Vern would decanonize any of the other trilogies. You put her in the prequels, she would have like met Anakin Skywalker as like a Padawan and been like, hey, cut that shit out. No, she would have empathized with him and probably would have talked him out of a lot of his bad feelings. She, Palpatine, would have never gotten his crusty little claws on Anakin.
I do think that Vern really would have helped Anakin in a way that no other Jedi did, simply based on her experiences as a young Jedi.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's something that we don't see a lot in Star Wars media later in the timeline with the Jedi, is that like empathy that is not driven by the idea of the ideals of the Jedi Order. It is just being a good person. And you see that a lot with the Jedi of this era and with the people of this era. It almost feels like the closest person I'm now realizing that Vern sort of feels like to me is Kanan. Not in the same necessarily way, but almost in the way that they interact with people who are like their philosophies around interacting with people who are not like force sensitive. There's something there. I don't really have it fully fleshed out, but
yeah, I think it has to do with how reactions to trauma, because we see in Rebels that Ezra finds out that his parents are dead, and Kanan does not just let him like like seethe, he like is like there for him, like not only just like emotionally but like physically like hugs him. And I think that that is also like hashtag Vern behavior of her being like, I give a shit about you, Avon, and I give a shit about you, Honesty and Imri, and I'm so sorry that this happened to you. But we do have to move through this forest because the rain is acid.
I think that a test of courage really shows like what the Jedi excel at. And it really gives us, I think, some of the deepest insight as to what the Jedi do when it is not strictly like, here, I'm here with the order, or, oh, I'm on a mission for the war. So I really like that part because it did show like even my man Dougie, even though he was only in it for a short time, you really see him interacting with all of these people and being like in the conversation and being like, yeah, no, I'm just a dude and I'm just here to hang out and like be cool, and like if you guys need me to chase some pirates away, okay, like, yeah.
Speaking of Jedi in different time periods, we had kind of talked about it just like outside of the podcast. This is something I personally believe in, that Ahsoka and Vern are so both similar and not alike, because I think that Vern is, I'm not going to say much more in tune with her emotions, because I think Ahsoka is very in tune with her emotions, but like based on like their age and maturity, I think that there is something to be said of like Vern and Ahsoka both have to grow up kind of fast, you know, because Vern is thrust into the position of Jedi at a very young age, and Ahsoka is, you know, thrown into a war. And I think about how, like, if Ahsoka hadn't left the Order at the end of the Wrong Jedi arc, like, her and Vernestra would have been the youngest Jedi in the Order, and I think that that says something about, like, the quality of Ahsoka Tano, and, like, those two together, they could have stopped Palpatine. They could have ended the Clone Wars.
They're the perfect good cop, bad cop. I think obviously...
I like the idea of Vern being the bad cop. She's got the light whip.
I like the idea of Ahsoka being like, I want to be the good cop. And Vern's like, okay, sure. I'm empathetic, so I will let you lead the way. Vern being like, I'm an empath.
Emery.
Not to
you're acting a little weird, but I'm an empath, so I can tell, and I'm feeling your emotions too. That's like Burry. We'll get into that, gentlemen, later.
Not to bring up like Vern decanonizing fucking everything again, but yeah, if she was put in prequels era and teamed up with Ahsoka, they could have saved Anakin Skywalker. I hate that I like truly believe this as someone who is like anti-Anakin. But if Vern is there, she and Ahsoka team up, they saved Anakin. Just like how Vern was able to stop Imri being like, don't get in my way or I'll kill you. Anakin would pull that shit too, like the scene from Revenge of the Sith, except with instead of Obi-Wan, it's Vernestra. And it's just like, if you're not with me, then you're my enemy, as you pulled out her fucking light whip. And just like, no, you shut up and think about your actions, Anakin.
I do like the idea of Vern being like, rest in peace to Obi-Wan, but I'm different. Vern being like, that's like people, oh, if Qui-Gon had been Anakin's master, he wouldn't have turned, which I always think is so dumb because it's not really about who his master was. The fact was that he was like deeply manipulated by Sidious, and it would have happened regardless of who his master was. I think unless it was Mace Windu, but that's a conversation for a different day. But people always have that conversation. But not Vern. If Vernestra was his master, she would have figured it out.
I also do enjoy the idea of Vernestra being not like an adult Vernestra. Like, I'm talking like 15-year-old Vernestra Rowe being like, all right, Anakin, you are 9 years old. We're gonna chill out, have a good time, and you are not hanging out with a grown-ass man who is requesting to talk to a 9-year-old boy. How about that? Anyways.
I do like Vern teaching Imri about stranger danger. And he's like, but we're Jedi, aren't we supposed to do outreach? And she's like, look, I appreciate your tenacity, bud, but no. Do you know them? We have a code word. So if I send someone to come pick you up, you need to make sure that you ask them for the code word.
What is the code word?
The code word is cheery, which is the name of that little monkey that he has.
Oh, R.I.P. little monkey Cheery.
I also cannot believe that they named it Cheery, which is the same name as Cheery. It's spelled differently, but it's pronounced the same way as Cheery from Thrawn Ascendancy.
That is the only Thrawn nod we're gonna get in this entire fucking series, isn't it? Is fucking Cheery the monkey. No, that's something I've been also thinking about a lot. I'm like, you know what would be pretty rad? If the Drengir or whatever the fuck, or just like, I just want to see Lysatra. That is something I really want to see in the High Republic, and it's something I know for a fact because it's like in wild space, and they're like, oh, the Outer Rim is really frontier, so if that's really frontier, wild space has got to be like fucking fucking Jeff Bezos going into space for 90 seconds, like, goddamn. Anyways,
no, get out. Yeah, so the comics, let's talk about them. I think the pacing of them is really good. I think the characters are so interesting as well. We don't get quite as much of like an insight as to like what they're thinking and their whole thought process, because we don't have the luxury of it being a book that can take a chapter or like a page to explain where they're at. So there were times I think where I was a little bit confused, but after reading it I was like, okay, I understand now. But I think the pacing's really good. I think the story is really interesting. And I think it ties in really well with the universe. It really like actually does the work of fleshing it out, which I really like.
Got to see more of Avar, which is nice because she is off being an epic girl boss, and has not been in any of the other of the books since. Well, besides just like quick parts where they kind of interact with her, and then they're like, "Okay, peace out, bye, Avar. We're leaving the station, so we'll talk to you when we get back, I guess." But seeing her in the comics is really fun and nice. Also, Skier, epic Trandoshan. I thought Bosk was my favorite Trandoshan, but maybe that was because he was the only Trandoshan I knew before, like Sid, and now Skier. So I'm just like, wow, I really love the diversity here. Although he's going through it. Ollie and Mel have, well, I think it started with fucking Mel pointing out that Sarah and Tarek look like Jeff the Killer, and I can't unsee it. It makes me upset.
We can't have our first conversation about a canon non-binary character be calling them Jeff the Killers. I do want to talk about those two funky little buddies. I think one of my favorite parts from the comic, so there's a lot of reasons that I really like this, because we are going to talk more about what they mean for trans representation and non-binary representation specifically. But something that did make me laugh is when one of them is having one of those moments and Vern is like, he needs help, and Ava runs over and she's like, not he, they. All I could think of is like Vern being like, he needs help, or oh, help he, and Avar's like, not he, they, and Vern's like, great, they are about to die. Like, I don't think that Vern is ever misgendering someone, and this is not me making a joke about like someone being misgendered, but I just feel like I'm like, Avar, that's not the biggest problem to deal with right now. Like, good for you. I really appreciate you making sure that we're using everyone's correct pronouns, but also they are having a bit of an issue.
I guess we could actually kind of get into that conversation right now about Tarek and Sarek. I think that's like a natural way to talk about like trans and non-binary representation in the High Republic, because they're not the only non-binary characters, but I feel like they're the ones that people are talking about the most, and that comes in twofold. I feel like we're not going to talk about the other non-binary Jedi just because Ollie hasn't read those comics yet. Tarek and Sarek are very interesting to me. Yes, Jess was correct. I saw them and immediately clocked them as Jeff the Killer looking asses. There's a look about them that is very, not upsetting to me. I'm just like, this is a lot. And I think that kind of speaks more to, I think that this is very interesting representation because obviously we were in a galaxy that's far, far away. Their perceptions of gender are going to be different than ours. And so the idea of their gender being this thing that is like a communal gender almost, because like they're twins and they're like, we use they them pronouns because we are.
Wow, like when you and Ollie had the same gender that one time.
Not us being Tarek and Sarek.
Also, first of all, it is Sarek.
Sarek. Sorry, my bad.
Okay, Avar, Kriss, calm down.
Yeah, not Ollie being Avar, Kriss. Am I Vern? Damn.
Just call me Avar, Kriss, because I'm defending trans people.
This would be an interesting conversation if it was queer people talking about like queerness and gender, and how that's going to be represented in this universe. But for so many people, like, I'm afraid that for people who don't quite understand non-binary people, that this representation might not hit the mark. Also, there's something to be said about like how marginalized people often get represented in fantasy and sci-fi media as non-human. That being said, I don't think that was like something that Cavan Scott was like, I'm going to make these non-binary twin aliens, ahaha. But yeah, I think that there's something interesting there about like gender nonconformity and like different cultures' exploration of gender within the Star Wars universe. But because it's them and then Cantum Psi, that's 3 people, and 2 of them use they them pronouns. We don't quite know if it's like because Star Wars has labeled them non-binary, because by all means they do fit the label of like not in the binary, but like is it culturally significant, or is this something that they have just like they grew up and they were like, actually we use they them pronouns?
Like, are they trans?
Yeah, that is the question.
I think the other thing with them too, I think it is a really interesting idea of exploring gender nonconformity throughout the Star Wars galaxy, like Mel was saying, but because this is a narrative and it is written by people who are using their opinions and their lens of being in the real world, that this is the first exposure a lot of people are going to get to non-binary people, and specifically to non-binary people in Star Wars. I think that's also a huge consideration. And again, not to say that there was any malice in creating these two or that, but there is sort of something a little weird about having your first non-binary characters be so weird.
Haunting.
Like, they're deeply like, also the fact that there are parts in the comic, aside from when the Drengir are like sticking their vines at people's noses and stuff, I think maybe some of the scariest panels are of these two. There is a panel that I'm thinking about very specifically that I think is so funny, which is one of them with their hand up on a glass wall and they're looking out into the ship that had been attacked by the Nihil, and they're just saying survivors. I don't even remember the context, but it's so funny. But yeah, there's something very odd to me about having your first, I guess, like confirmed transgender character in the High Republic be people who are so distinctly unhuman.
Once again, I think also something that it doesn't it kind of bothers me, but it's not like with I almost said normal Star Wars, with the rest of Star Wars, if they had like some like, if in the sequels there were Sarah and Tarek, I would be deeply upset and I would be like but I think also what gets me is, once again, there is that other non-binary Jedi character who, like, I just feel like I have not seen anyone talk about them, and they, to me, in the things we've seen them in, I feel like they're not like, you know, perfect representation, because they are more of a minor character, and I would love to see like a main character. I would love to see in a book, not necessarily Tarek and Sarek, I would love to like meet like a non-binary pilot or a non-binary politician, and like that would be fun. What does that have to do with the fact that that non-binary Jedi is a human and also a brown person, which kind of stinks.
I do think the main reason people are talking about Tarek and Sarek more is because of how they were first introduced in, you know, Pride Month and, you know, Disney pull that whole thing like, oh yeah, happy Pride. Here's our first, canon non-binary characters. There you go. And there was all that discourse about them, which is why people seem to know a lot about them and are talking about them specifically.
No, I completely agree. I think they were actually announced on TDOV, which is my birthday, Trans Day Visibility, March 31st. And that was like another like punch to the throat of like,
oh my god,
Jeff the Killer, non-binary representation. There you go, bestie. You know what? Like, you do you, besties. And once again, like, I think as characters, they're very interesting. I can't wait to see like just more of them in general. That entire squad, I don't know what to quite call them, like the Starlight Beacon Drengir aunties.
Drengir aunties.
I think that is very powerful. I also love like there's like the in general the squad that they have assembled to take them down. The fact that like can we get into that? No, because I think that has to do with the Republic Fair of like Reith and Comac being there and amongst other people. Seeing Orla, that was pretty epic.
Yeah, that was, I love Orla so much. I was so excited to see her. I was like, oh my god, woman, you're here. I missed you. I was really worried at the end of Into the Dark that Orla was just gonna like fuck off and then be gone for a little bit. So as soon as she came back in the comics, I was like, oh, I was pleasantly surprised.
Can we talk about the Hutts? The Hutts and their tie into the Drengir anti club.
I would like nothing more. I do like that the Hutts were like, we're here, and Avar was like, can you please be helpful? And they were like, yeah, okay. Like, this seems like kind of a bad situation for everyone, so let's be besties for now. Also, was Avar riding a Rancor?
Yes, she was.
Yes.
That's so good. I can't stop thinking about that.
I know we were talking about how Muchi was the Rancor from the original trilogy's like mom or whatever the fuck. The Rancor that the Rancor that Avar rode and then it was immediately like destroyed in a passion. That was actually the great grandma of Muchi. So
I fucking can't.
Oh my god. Bad Batch reference?
That's also like I appreciate that their nods are very subtle to things that have happened in other Star Wars in the High Republic, but I won't lie, I do kind of miss the Mandalorians. I would love to know. I think that this is actually kind of a good time to kind of explore what the fuck they are up to, because there is like, the Mandalorian in our time. Like, how did they get from Mr. Darksaber wielder to Bo-Katan to Din Djarin,
Yeah, I'm deeply like wishing that the Mandalorians would show up in this too, because of the same reasons of like what's going on with them. Are the Nihil just like hey, don't fuck with Mandalore, because isn't Mandalore in the Outer Rim like kind of systems? So the Nihil are just like, yeah, we're fucking up the Outer Rim, but we're staying away from the Mandalorians because the Mandalorians will kill us.
I do like the idea of Asgar Ro pulling up to Mandalore and being like, okay, guys, let's do it. And they go down there to go and do a quick fight, and the Mandalorians are like, we have guns with bullets in them, and they're like, okay, let's leave.
We have the power of gunfu. I don't give a shit about your stupid paths.
Yeah, literally, they're like, the only path that you need right now is the one that takes you away from our fucking system.
To your goddamn grave.
The whole thing with like Marcion Ro's like family and their weird connection to the Jedi. Do you think they would have gone up to the Mandalorians like, hey, you guys don't like Jedi, I think, and we don't like Jedi. You want to team up? And then the Mandalorians are like, no, we don't want to be part of your MLM. Get the fuck out of here. Get out of our system.
I do like, I'll expose myself as a fake fan, and I don't know much about Tarre Viszla. But I do like the idea of Tarre Viszla seeing Marcion Ro and being like, okay, get the fuck out of here.
He said, you don't have like an eye line on your goddamn helmet. I don't give a shit about you. Like, you just have like this menacing eye. Like, girl, like T-visor nation.
Yeah. The idea of him being like, I don't like that the Mandalorians are gatekeeping me.
That's some shit he would say, though, is the thing.
Yeah,
the problem.
He'd be like, they're gatekeeping the Nihil from being from Mandalore. And then
he'd bring up his dad too. He's just like, they gatekeeped my dad. And thus they have gatekeeped me. So fuck the Mandalorians.
I do like him being like, he sent the Mandalore at the time a DM and was like, hey girly, do you want to destroy the Jedi? And they're like, LOL, no. And then he's like, Pan, Lorna, they're gatekeeping me.
Wake up, sheeple.
Doesn't even like bring up Kassav. He said fuck Kassav. Only Pan and Lorna.
He's like, girl, I don't care about you. I'm so sorry.
This was before, Kassav died in Light of the Jedi fly hiking.
My favorite character of the angels. Okay, actually, interesting thing I just thought of, because I also don't know a whole lot about like Tarre Viszla. What if he's in the Jedi Order right now? It's 200 years before the events of literally everything.
I was unsure when Tarre Viszla was alive. I thought he was like Old Republic, but that
I'm gonna do some live fact checking. Sorry, hold on. You're gonna hear me typing.
I just know he existed a long ass time ago.
Tarre Viszla, when were you born, bestie? Prior to the sacking of the Jedi Temple.
If they mention like this is from Rising Storm, but I'm pretty sure Ollie's already heard this part. I hope. Please God, I can't keep doing this. But just they mentioned the Mandalorians, right? Ollie, you heard them talk
in the
briefly,
Rising Storm.
Or no, when did they mention
Light of the
Jedi?
They're trying to figure out what happened with the Legacy run.
Okay, yeah,
like,
sorry, no,
probably not the Mandalorians.
Then this has nothing to do with the Rising Storm, but them being like, oh yeah, the Mandalorians haven't done shit in a while, so it can't be them. This has got to be like way after like any Jedi Mandalorian like war. If the Mandalorians have decided to fuck off and be like, stay out of our system, we're gatekeeping, you can't come in here.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page now. There's no dates or anything for Tarre Viszla. The world is our oyster, I guess.
Oh my God.
Cameron Scott, here's a free boy.
I can't wait for phase 2 of the High Republic books to be all about Mandalore.
They canonized Tarre Viszla's like involvement with the Jedi being in the High Republic and not like earlier than that.
Okay, here's my question. Who do we think Tarre Viszla would hang out with of the High Republic characters? Because I have my answer, but
here's my thing. I don't know much about the gentleman. I think it would be very funny for him to be like stuck hanging out with Elzar. But like specifically like Elzar right post Light of the Jedi when he's like going through it and he's like, okay, well, we're just stationed at the same place and we're both having a horrible fucking time. I'm leaving the Jedi Order. It'd
be really powerful if he was at least friends or acquainted with Reith's master, Jorah. I think they would be a pretty powerful team, although I think she could also kick his ass. But that's just me.
The thing is you're completely right. I was actually thinking, here is my welcome to my fan fiction that I am writing. I do enjoy the idea of Tarre Viszla also going on that mission from Into the Dark with Orla and Comac. He just has the fucking Darksaber and he's like, listen, you dumbass snake, I'm gonna kill the shit out of you. That is very powerful to me. Also, Ollie did just say in the chat, Tar joins the polycule.
No, get him away from Stella and Avar and Elzar.
He disrupts the polycule on purpose. Yeah, so we have a couple other topics that we have come up with that we thought would just be fun chats about the High Republic. This is still spoiler free,
So it's spoilers up into the Rising Storm.
Yes, correct. Does everybody want to drop their kin list real quick?
Okay, I'll go. My kin list is composed of Bel Zettifar, Reith Silas, Imri Canteros, and Elzar Mea.
That's very powerful. You have a lot of poor little meow meows.
Yeah, it's made me deeply question what the hell is wrong with me.
I feel like that's a very good list.
That's a very good list, all things considered.
Yeah, it's also very like consistent. Like I'm like, I get you. I get that.
They're all guys, they're just going through it. So they are all poor little meow meow. Also, I considered it, but I hated the thought of, but I do unfortunately relate a lot to Marcus. It's very sad and makes me feel sick, but then again, I also related a lot to Anakin and he also makes me feel sick. So
You see, that's kind of like a problem that I sometimes have with Elzar, is where I'm like, we are kind of having a similar emotion right now, but I can't dissect how similar we are feeling. I don't want to think about it.
My kin list is as follows. I think my highest kin of the High Republic is unfortunately Honesty Weft. It's pretty rough that he is the character I kin, but I don't think I have quite related in such like a deeply personal way to a Star Wars character. Like I do really resonate with Hera Syndulla, just like some of her like larger like philosophical ideas. But Honesty, I was like, oh, we have some shared trauma. We're gonna be best friends. Not to say that my father exploded in a passion, because that is not the scenario. Anyways, I think also on my kin list, I think in high school I definitely would have said Vernestra Rowe. But now that I am an adult human being, sorry, you are so successful, girly. And not to say that I am not successful, but you're a girl boss and you stay winning. And I have consecutively lost, hence why I'm an Honesty Weft Kinney. I think I'm trying to think. There's one other character and I forgot to write it down, and that's I feel like a real dummy head. I guess if I had to choose another character, I really relate to I think Kiev. Now we don't know once again like a whole lot about like her internal monologue, but like there are just some things that like the relationship she has with Skier I think is really the big thing for me. That like I'm like, yeah, can you tell I have father issues? Anyways,
I just want to say that I do like that. I do find Key very relatable too, but in the fact that I also cannot stop fucking swearing, and people have to be like, "Hey, what's your profanity?"
same. Also, I can't believe I forgot it. Bel Zettifar. I cannot believe I forgot my boy. I think it's because I just like care about him so much, and like the idea of comparing the two of us, of me saying I kin Bel Zettifar, that's my boy. That's my favorite Star Wars character, I believe.
So I'll go. Mine actually consists of characters that none of you said. So I think my number one kin, I so so my first one, I think this is in no particular order because I don't know if any of them are like my number one, but one I relate to a lot is Comac. I think Comac has a lot of stuff where he's like, I have dealt with some things and I have dealt with losing people before, and I never really coped with it in the way I probably should. So that was very #relatable. He also has just like a tinge of like gifted kid burnout syndrome. Not a lot, but like just enough that I'm like, as someone who is also like in academia, I'm like, and someone who is planning on pursuing a career in academia, I'm like, that I can relate to this gentleman, because there's a point where it's like, oh, you have so many aspirations, and I'm like, I think I'm actually just going to read for a living. The other one that I think I'm noticing a lot of a theme here, the other one I think is Des Rydan, because Des also does have a matter of like, what am I even doing? Like, who am I? What is my plan? Who seems, I think, very put together, but there are cracks. And I relate to that very deeply. Also, he's just very cool and sexy, and I'm also very cool and sexy. Same with Comac. The other two that I have, I also relate a lot to Affy. I wouldn't necessarily say that I kin her, but there's just something there, something about it, her like tenacity, and her saying like, look, there's a lot going on with me. I think very specifically about when the Nihil are attacking the ship, and she's like, that's cool, I gotta get my codes. Something about like, everything is chaos, I'm just gonna focus on the thing I need to do and get out. Like, that's very relatable. And the last one that I have is Burry. I just think it's cool that he's like, I don't really know how to communicate, but I'm very empathetic. And you know, again, I'm a very cool, empathetic person. So
Ollie entering their empath era is
no. Here's the thing. I'm an empath, so it doesn't matter what you think.
I'm thinking about that moment now in Light of the Jedi where Burry's like talking to people and they cannot understand him, but he is still responding to everything they're saying. Like, yeah, I'm trying my best to help people. Thanks for asking. And they're like, I don't know what you just said. And he's like, I know you don't know what I'm saying, but it's okay. I know what I'm saying, and I know what you're feeling, so it's okay.
There's something very powerful, I think, about Burry. He's just such like a positive individual, and every situation we see him in is just him being like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm here to help, and if not, I'll just stand over here. Here you go. All right, go for it. Love you. That actually does bring us to another question. This was one that Mel and Noah answered in the last Rogue Ones. That was sent in by, I believe, Crime Lord Amidala on TikTok, which was, could you fight Burry? Both like physically or emotionally? I don't feel like, okay, so Burry is a Wookiee, and I know he's still a young guy. I do feel like that kind of like, yeah, he's a young guy, but he's also like a Wookiee and he has a lightsaber. And last time I checked, I am not a Wookiee and I do not have a lightsaber. So I do think he might be able to beat me there. Also the emotional toll that it would take to hurt that little guy. He's just a little guy. As you guys talked about, I don't think I could do it.
Yeah. I did live tweet all my reactions to listening to Mel and Noah's Rogue One, and I did also answer this before in my live tweets. But I also don't think I could beat Burry in a fight because, like Ollie said, he is a Wookiee. And you guys can't see, but I do have noodle arms. I do have stick arms. I have no upper body strength. So in like even if he didn't have his lightsaber, because if he had his lightsaber, he would immediately win, no question. But even without the lightsaber, he could still just probably pick me up and then throw me across the room, and I would be dead.
Not Burry Batista bombing Jess.
But emotionally too, I think Burry is more emotionally competent, so he would beat me emotionally.
He'd be like, I'm here for you.
And then I would cry because, yeah, just I am also one of those people that's like constantly going through it, and all it takes when I'm really at the like precipice of having a breakdown is someone being like, are you okay? And then I will fucking explode.
To answer some more questions, this is about another High Republic character. Sage at Sage Syndulla did ask how to adopt Imri.
Our friend Julia Christine also asked that.
The first step is you have to beat back Vernestra and say, like, because I do believe that she will fight to keep her boy.
Canonically, yes, she has fought to keep her boy.
Yeah, so
so if you can beat Vern, then you're a bit closer to adopting Imri. But I think you'd also need Imri's consent because he is like 15 and can very much think for himself.
He'd be like, I'm sensing right now some sad emotions. Do we want to talk about that? And then it's all downhill from there. Suddenly he is adopting you, and you are Vern's Padawan's Padawan.
Not teen dad Imri. I do like the theme of Star Wars being like, oh, you're like going through the teen years. Here, have a younger teenager to take care of. Very Anakin and Ahsoka of them. I mean, I guess Anakin was like 20, but he was still like, he was younger than all of us are now.
Emotional maturity.
Vern is still like, one-upping Anakin. One, she became a Jedi Knight before he did. Like, Anakin was already pretty young Jedi Knight, right? But she became Jedi Knight at 15, got a Padawan at 16. Look at her. And her Padawan's only 2 years younger than her.
I bet you by anything, by age 19, she's going to be on the council.
And the master. They're like, yeah, Master Vernestra Rowe, a member of the Jedi Council.
So sorry to Mace Windu. you being the youngest person ever to be granted the rank of master has been revoked. It is now Vern 200 years earlier.
How old was Mace when he got?
He was 28.
Oh shit! Good for him.
Good for him. I love that for Mace Windu.
To quote Olivia Rodrigo, good for you.
I think I'm gonna combine two of these questions that we got. Cactile on Instagram and Lilith at Crime Lord Amidala asked kind of similar questions about like who our favorite characters are in the High Republic. Lil did kind of ask more about like non-Jedi characters, so I think if we just present it like two, like this is my favorite High Republic character, this is my favorite non-Jedi High Republic character. I can go first. I can shoot from the hip pretty confidently. I think it's obvious if you follow me on Twitter. Bel Zettifar is my favorite Star Wars character, period. The evolution of me having like, I'm like passively like, oh, this is a good boy, reading Light of the Jedi, to finishing The Rising Storm and grieving just so much thinking about that boy. I know that was very ominous, Ollie. I'm very sorry. It just like he's my special boy. And in terms of non-Jedi, it's difficult because my favorite non-Jedi character is in a book that we are not discussing in this episode, but I think of the characters that we have here, probably Honesty Weft, or maybe even Leox. Leox is just delightful. I want to know everything about that gentleman. I'm obsessed with his mind.
I think for my favorite non-Jedi character is probably also Leox. I think Leox is an absolute bundles of joy. Every time that man would speak, I was just like, oh my God, so true, bestie. I feel like if Leox asked me for my credit card information and my social security number, I would give it to him.
And he would cherish it. He wouldn't sell it to the black market. He would just cherish it.
Yeah, I 100% I agree. He'd write it down and like put little hearts around it and pin it up in the vessel. But my favorite Jedi character, it's hard because I'm not to be like, I like all of them. But one character that I really like is Orla. I think Orla's really interesting. I think her story is so different because the perspective of being a Jedi who is sort of losing faith in the Order and what the Order means is not super uncommon in Star Wars. We have like a lot of content about being like, what is the Order? But seeing someone who says, I don't know if I have faith in the Order, but I have faith in the Force and I have faith in the individual Jedi. I just need to like figure out what I'm doing with my life and how I feel the Force. I think that's such an interesting take. And her lightsaber is very cool and she's very sexy.
It would have been very epic if Orla trained Rey.
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. Also, they both have this is only for like Empress Palpatine when she goes through her little dark moment in The Rise of Skywalker, when she does have the double-bladed like elbow joint staff.
It was a sign. That was Orla being like, I'm so sorry, I'm not here to help you right now.
I do also think it's pretty epic that she also, I mean, Ahsoka too, I'm pretty sure, right? Canonizing more the cleansing of a red kyber crystal, like bleeding it out to turn it into white one. So there's Orla being more epic with her cool white blades. My favorite, I'll start with like Jedi first because we were talking about Orla. It is really hard because all the Jedi in the High Republic have something about them that's just like, wow, you're all so epic. And like, no offense to any other era Jedi, but again, the High Republic Jedi cast is just built different. And I think this should not come as a surprise considering the way I keep talking about Vern in this podcast, but I think my favorite Jedi is Vernestra. She's just put together, accomplished at such a young age, and I'm like, damn, could never be me, but you go, girl. Really girl boss honorary. I love her relationship with Emery, and just, yeah, again, how she is able to empathize with like people even if they aren't like Jedi. she's everything to me. That is my special girl. I know I said before Omega's my special girl, but I think Vern is like quickly coming up there too to be like, no, I'm the new special girl. My favorite non-Jedi. It is also like if we're like picking between like these like 3 books and the comics, but there's not really non-Jedi in the comics except I guess the Hutts and the Nihil. Leox also, it meant so much to me to see him as like a canonically ace person in Star Wars, because I'm also ace, so it's just like, oh shit, this person is ace. Especially since they were talking about sex, so it like really caught me off guard when he's just like, oh yeah, I've tried it. It's not really my thing. I know other people, that's their thing, but I'm good the way I am. Just want to be a pilot. And it's just like, oh my god, are you asexual? Is this happening right now? Also, I think my dream blood rotation, he's there.
Do you like that we have a character who is canonically doing drugs the entire time he's in the book?
One of my favorite parts of Into the Dark is when I think it's Dez who is like, dying, and he's like, wait, I got something for this, and he just like lays some spice on him, and he's like, hey guys.
The line was because the line was with Orla where she was like, earlier she's like, I found your stash, and then later he's like no, it's medicinal, and then later he's like, I told you it was medicinal.
I know, that's so good, because Dez is like, actually yeah, I think it's working. He's like, see, I told you.
Not Chekhov's blunt.
Leox Jossie, we are Leox Jossie stands in this house. He's just the type of character you don't see a lot, like where it's like he's just a good guy, like with his type of personality too.
I think there's like a stereotype with asexual people that they're like these cold, calculating, like sexless beings, and it's like, that's most of the ace people I know are not like that at all.
Yeah, I think it was a really like nice take. I really enjoyed seeing that aspect, and it really does help diversify the High Republic and diversify the universe of Star Wars, and saying like not everyone is,
not everyone's
cis-het.
fucking.
Yeah, and not everyone's fucking. Period. The 2 genders, cis-het and fucking.
Not cis-het and fucking.
Oh, well, I mean, I think this was another perfect transition into it, of the 2 genders being cis and fucking. I like the idea of every trans person in the galaxy just like are like, we fucking. Who do we had? Because I know in our conversation we were basically just like, everyone is trans until proven otherwise. Everyone in this galaxy is trans at this moment.
I do believe like everyone in the High Republic has trans energy, like 100%. I believe that. But there are some that I feel like very strongly about. And that was the first one, I think, is Avar Kriss. I don't know why, but something about that just feels like so good. I think the other thing too is like the way that she, like, I think something really cool about Avar is that she does present like femininity, and she is a feminine woman for all intents and purposes. But she is never like devalued or made to be like lesser. And I think there is a problem in Star Wars with women and being seen as like fully fledged characters without it being about the fact that they are a woman. Not that we can't have stories about that, but I just think something about Avar Kriss being a trans woman is so powerful to me.
Funny that yours is Avar, because mine is also a member of the polycule, but I think Elzar is the trans one.
I agree 100%. I believe I do like them being T for T.
That is very good. And that would also explain why Avar is so quick to like correct people on like getting correct pronouns. Yes! Because one for herself, but also one for her bestie / member of her polycule, Elzar.
I do love that.
Can I just say, with my headcanon, that the polycule is actually T for T for T. I think Stellan Gios is transgender. Speaking of which, I also believe his once Padawan, Vernestra Rowe, also uses she/they pronouns. Until proven otherwise, we just haven't heard those set of pronouns used for them. Who is to say? I think that there's just a vibe about them, and of course we don't get to really see this in the content that we have covered thus far, especially like Stellan. But with Vernestra, like there's just an energy that she has, that she brings, and I'm like,
there's a level of like non-conformity with her where it feels very, maybe because she's just so relatable, and I'm like, I use they them pronouns. You know who else I think should? Everyone in this, but specifically Vernestra. I'll just rattle them off. Here's my other very specific ones I care a lot about. Reed Silas. I do believe that.
I'm 100% for that too.
Also Orla. There for that. I also think Comac has big he, they energy. Basically everyone from the Rising Storm, if stated otherwise, does also use they pronouns.
I was gonna say, is it bad that I also deeply think that Marc is trans, and that's also why he had bad problems with his dad, because his dad is a transphobe.
Kassav, because Kassav uses he, they pronouns.
I love hearing Ollie's thoughts about Kassav, because here's the thing. That gentleman died in Light of the Jedi, and then I never thought about him again. But
I do bring him up like once a day at least.
Yeah, it's
this actually does dovetail very nicely into another thing we wanted to talk about is which of the Tempest runners would you like be a part of? Well, I don't remember what their squads are called. Which Tempest would you follow?
I'll shoot from the hip. I do think Lorna D is scary, but I also deeply hate Panetta because yeah, fuck that man. He seems very transphobic and homophobic and just all the phobics. But and then Kassav, he's deeply troubling. Him and his Katy Perry like rave like drug party scares me, I think, more than Lorna D. So I am picking Lorna D's little squad. I think she's cool, even though she does scare me. Like, she's a cool girl boss, and I'd like to be on her squad that seems to be winning.
I agree. I think Panetta is just, there's something about that gentleman that I do not enjoy. I don't know quite what it is. I can't put my finger on it. Actually I can, I just don't want to spoil anything. I hate that gentleman. Vibe is rancid. Read The Rising Storm, you'll know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. Kassav, here's the problem with that gentleman, besides the fact that like the Katy Perry rave music would be like a lot for me personally. Like I just have like a lot of issue processing senses. Like you get overwhelmed very easily, especially like with audio. And so going on that ship sounds like a goddamn nightmare. Because it's just like smelly, and also Dark Horse by Katy Perry is playing. And Lorna D is a MILF is the thing. So I'm like, hey girly, do you need a bestie? I will do anything for you. And then she'd probably kill me, and that's okay.
I do like Mel's simp era. That's very powerful. I do think Lorna D will probably be the best boss. That being said, I think I would have to work for Kassav. And I say that for a very specific reason. I like things done a certain way. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm like type A personality about it or anything. But I do like to have things in certain orders. And I feel like with Kassav, it's like they're not doing anything in any particular order. So if I could show up and be like his assistant, and I can just kind of do things the way I want to do them that make sense to me, and then just be like, yeah, just ask me if you need anything and I'll just like help you do it. I feel like I would be pretty good. Like no one's gonna step on my toes and be like, hey, don't do that way. Like as long as I'm not like being annoying or whatever, like they're not gonna care. So I feel like that could work out for me. Also, like little lore drop is like I don't drink, I don't partake in any drugs, so I would be completely sober, and I would probably be the only sober one on that ship.
Having to be sober on that goddamn ship sounds like a nightmare.
Well, but that's the thing, is if I'm the only one who's sober, I'm gonna be the one who's like, all right, I'm in control here, basically. Like,
Ollie is the DD.
Yeah, no, literally, like I will be the
can't.
DD of Kassav's whole situation. And I just think that could be a role that I could succeed in. And I think, obviously, I think when Kassav goes to do his whole thing in Light of the Jedi, I'll just kind of be like, I'm gonna go, and then maybe I'll get to be the third Tempest runner when he gets exploded. So I'm rising in the ranks. Marc, look out, I'm coming for your neck.
That's very powerful. I love that for you.
Thank you. I'm entering the pyramid scheme and I'm becoming the top of the pyramid.
We were speaking a little earlier about Miss Lorna D. I think this is a good way to segue into this question. Who is the best High Republic MILF?
So I have my answer immediately. I actually have two. The first one I think is Teami, who is the Duros Jedi who does sadly pass away in Light of the Jedi. I just think she's cute. She just seems like someone with MILF energy. But I want to put an honorable mention, Nibasik. Something about her. She's kind of, I think maybe that's more like GILF territory.
I also was thinking about Nib because she does have very like mom vibes, especially towards like Burry. But yeah, you're right. I think that's more GILF territory because she is kind of old. So I think my actual real answer about MILF is Chancellor Lena So herself. Like, she is really pretty. I saw that concept art. I do also really dig her cool what are the name of her little beasts or her pals that hang out with her all the time?
I forgot. I just call them lions in my head.
Her space lions.
Her poor little meow meows.
Her poor little meow meows are really cool. And she actually is a mom because she does have a son. Although that's Rising Storm territory. But yeah. So she's cool. She's definitely a MILF in my eyes.
Here's the thing. I think the answer is very obvious for me. It's Lorna D. And you may say, Mel, that's not a MILF. We don't know Lorna's age. And if there is some evidence in some books that are to come that she has hung out at least with one mom canonically. Not her own mother, just like a mom. So I'm just saying, MILF. She does not have any maternal energy about her. She is very kind of the opposite. Like, I do not trust her with a child. But she's a MILF in the way that she is a mom I would like to no, she's just very powerful, and I love to see a girl boss winning. I think another MILF that we need to acknowledge is Avon's mom. Gira is everything to me. I love that, like, I know she has a complicated relationship with her daughter, but hey, I am willing to become Avon's step parent. Like, let's get into it.
There is one more character, I think, who I was going to mention and I totally forgot about, who is actually MILF age. I think a lot of people forget that, and that is one Orla Jareni. A lot of people are like, oh, she's younger than, but like, I don't think people process the fact that she has to be in her, like, if not her late 30s, her 40s, because it was 25 years that she had her little flashback moment. And she was probably at least 17 then. So I'm not good at math, but do the numbers. I'm sure it works out.
I was also actually going to say I completely forgot because I don't know if she technically counts as a MILF. I think she's actually more of like a wine aunt. Indira Stokes.
Correct. I will dip into my theory that I do think if she had a TikTok, Indira would do like MILF thirst traps.
Oh my god.
I just think it'd be very funny.
The idea of Loden Greatstorm being a TikTok dad, of being like, what is that gentleman's account name? Is it it's just your
Korean dad. But it's like your Jedi dad.
Your Twilight dad.
Your Twilight dad. Just being like, I'm cooking eggs this morning. And then Belle being in the background of the video and people being like, who is the boy?
And this is crucial to the story. Belle does not make TikToks.
Absolutely.
Belle is not on TikTok. And people are like, Loden will go on like TikTok live and walk around the Alfrona, the outpost, and he'll be like, oh, this is my son, Belle. And everyone's like, hi, Belle. And he's like, can you please turn that off? I'm trying to teach Ember how to sit up.
I do like, because, Mel sang my phone cooking eggs this morning, but like, that Porter's actually the one doing all the cooking and fucking Loden's taking all the credit for it. Oh no.
The idea of Loden filming Porter making food and then like being like, yeah, I cooked that, and then like someone in the comments being like, I saw like huge hands.
Also not green.
Also, yeah, and then he's like, no, I was wearing gloves. He's just like lying, just like not bad lies, just bad lies in the sense that he's bad at lying, but like just like shit, like, dude, what the fuck are you doing?
Lying for Clout Loden Greatstorm is a very good concept. I do think influencer Loden's very funny. I do also hate the idea that after Loden does have his fun little thing happen to him at the end of Light of the Jedi, Belle inherits his account and is like, what am I supposed to do with this?
It just broke my heart to think about the idea of Belle having to come onto TikTok and being like, hey guys, so my dad did break his leg in a passion and then get kidnapped by the Nihil. If you've seen him, let me know. Everyone's telling me he's dead, but I don't think that's true.
Not TikTok, do your thing, find my master.
Not true crime podcaster Belle Zetabar.
Serial host Belle Zetabar. We hope you enjoyed our discussion of the High Republic. Keep an eye out for the next regular episode of RuPalp's Podrace. If you enjoyed this, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, follow us at RuPalp's Podrace on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and subscribe to us on your preferred podcatcher. May the Force be with you, and don't criff it up.
Or light in life.
Waka waka.
Ride the storm, besties.